I want you to think about the most powerful person you've ever known. Now, I'm not talking about somebody wealthy or famous. I'm talking about somebody in your life. Someone who carried that thing, that God-given thing that would change the atmosphere in a room whenever they walked into it. Maybe it was a grandmother who could pray the paint off the walls. Or maybe it was a pastor whose words rearranged the way you thought. Or it could be a mentor who saw something in you before you saw it in yourself. Now, let me ask the question. That thing that they had, did they pass it on? Did they take what was in them and place it in somebody else? Or did they carry it to their grave? And when they died, it died with them. Because here's what nobody talks about in church, in the kingdom, in our families. And Dr. Miles Monroe used to say this all the time. The richest place on earth is the graveyard. It's full of books that were never written, businesses that were never started, teachings that were never delivered, legacies that were never transferred. Not because they weren't fruitful. Some of these people produced abundantly, but they never multiplied what they produced. And when they left, it left with them. That's not a tragedy of talent. That's a tragedy of multiplication. And that's what God is going to address in your life today. So don't go anywhere. Let's get into it. Welcome to Overcomers Empowerment Ministries. I'm Pastor Derek, and I want to thank you for taking the time to be with us today. Now, we're going to get into part 3 of what we call the process of dominion. Last week, we talked about being fruitful, producing what God put in you. This week, we're going to take it to the next step because producing is not enough. God didn't say be fruitful and stop. He said be fruitful and multiply. And by the time we're done today, you're going to understand why that word multiplication changes everything and why most people are doing addition when God commanded multiplication. Stay with me. Today, we're asking the question, what dies with you? This is part 3 of the process of dominion, or what I like to call the process of dominion. We've been coming from Genesis 1, verses 26 through 28, with a strong emphasis on verse 28, which is where you find this process of dominion. So let me show you something in the text that most people miss. They run right past it. And once you see it, you won't be able to unsee it. So we look at our passage, Genesis 1, 26 through 28. And it says, then God said, let us make man in our image, according to our likeness. Let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the air, over the cattle, over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him. Male and female, he created them. Then God blessed them and said to them, be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth and subdue it. Have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the air, and over every living thing that moves on the earth. Now, we've been in this text for a few weeks now, and I already told you that order matters. God builds in sequence. First, identity, then fruitfulness, and now multiplication. But watch this. God didn't say, be fruitful and add. He said, be fruitful and multiply. That's not a synonym. That's a system upgrade. Here's the difference. And I need you to lock this in because this will restructure how you think about everything you do. Addition is when you do more. Multiplication is when what you do replicates without you. Addition, I teach one person, then I teach another person, then another. I'm adding. Multiplication, I teach one person how to teach. Now they teach 10, and those 10 teach 10. And I didn't even have to be there, be in the room for any of it. Addition grows your workload. Multiplication grows your legacy. Addition requires a presence. Multiplication survives your absence. God never designed you to carry the kingdom on your back by adding one more task or one more project or one more effort to your plate. He designed a system where what you produce gets duplicated. It gets transferred, replicated, mass produced so that it outlives you. Now, the question becomes, how does this actually work? Not talking about theory, we're talking about in practice. And the best case study is a man that most people really know for one main thing. But what happened after that story is where the real lesson in multiplication happens. Everybody knows that David killed Goliath. That's a familiar story that we teach in Sunday school all the time. It's a familiar illustration that many pastors use in their messages often. But that story isn't necessarily the main point. That's actually stage one. What David did after the giant fell. This is where we find the real kingdom principle of multiplication and where it comes alive. So we look at 1 Samuel chapter 17, verses 48 through 51. And it says, so it was when the Philistine arose and came and drew near to meet David, that David hurried and ran toward the army to meet the Philistine. Then David put his hand in his bag and took out a stone, and he slung it and struck the Philistine in his forehead, so that the stone sank into his forehead, and he fell on his face to the earth. So David prevailed over the Philistine with a sling and a stone, and struck the Philistine and killed him. But there was no sword in his hand, in the hand of David. Therefore David ran and stood over the Philistine, took his sword, and drew it out of its sheath, and killed him, and cut off his head with it. And when the Philistines saw that their champion was dead, they fled. Okay, so this is where David kills Goliath, right? So here we see David produced. He killed the giant. He bore fruit. And that's where most people stop with the story. But notice something. David killed one giant. And while that was miraculous and extraordinary and God empowered, it was still the victory of one man, by one man. If David stopped there, if he just kept being the giant killer his whole life, running into every battle personally, fighting every Philistine himself, that's not multiplication. That's addition. That's David adding one more kill to his resume over and over until he was too old or too tired to fight. And that's exactly where most kingdom people get stuck. They produce, but they never move beyond personal production. Fruitfulness gets the victory. Multiplication gets the dynasty. But David didn't stop at one giant. We have to fast forward and watch what happens decades later. Here's where it gets powerful. Years pass, David is now king, and war breaks out with the Philistines again. By this time, I want you to pay attention to who's fighting. We look at 1 Chronicles chapter 20, verses 4 through 8. It says, now it happened after this that war broke out at Gezer with the Philistines, at which time Sibbecai the Hushathite killed Sippai, who was one of the sons of the giant. and they were subdued. Again, there was war with the Philistines, and Elhanan, the son of Jair, killed Lami, the brother of Goliath the Gittite, the shaft of whose spear was like a weaver's beam. Yet again, there was war at Gath, where there was a man of great stature with 24 fingers and toes, 6 on each hand and 6 on each foot. And he also was born to the giant. So when he defied Israel, Jonathan, the son of Shimei, David's brother, killed him. Did you catch that? Sibbecai killed a giant. Elhanan killed a giant, who was actually the brother of Goliath. Then Jonathan killed a giant. 3 different men, 3 different battles, 3 giants wiped out. And where was David? He wasn't on the field. He didn't have to be, because somewhere between the valley of Elah and the throne room, David didn't just fight giants. He raised giant killers. He took what was in him, the courage, the faith, the combat strategy, the willingness to run toward what everyone else ran from, and he put it in other men. That is multiplication. The proof that you have multiplied is that the work continues without your presence. Now, let me break down how David multiplied, because there's a system embedded in this story. And this system applies whether your fruit is spiritual, whether it's intellectual, or a product or a skill. Now, we've said that multiplication is a system. There's 4 layers to this system of multiplication, 4 layers. The first layer, layer 1, if your fruit is spiritual, then multiply disciples. That's layer 1. If your fruit is spiritual, multiply disciples. David didn't just train fighters, he shaped culture. His mighty men didn't just learn technique, they caught his spirit. The same reckless faith that teenager had when he charged that 9-foot warrior with the sling became the operating system of the entire army. That's discipleship. Jesus told it to us this way. He said, "Go therefore and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe all things that I have commanded you. And lo, I am with you always, even to the end of the age." Now, I don't have time to really dig into that like I need to right now. We'll do that on another one. But there's a lot to what he was saying there, way more than what we give it credit for. But notice, Jesus didn't say, "Go and gather audiences." He said, "Make disciples." Audiences watch, disciples replicate. An audience needs you on stage. A disciple carries your mandate into rooms that you will never enter. Layer 2. If your fruit is ideas, multiply your reach. David's Psalms outlived his kingdom. He wrote worship songs that are still being sung 3,000 years later. He didn't just sing, he recorded. He put pen to scroll. And because he did, his ideas multiplied across time zones, across languages, across civilizations, across centuries. What idea are you carrying that needs to be written down? It needs to be broadcasted. It needs to be published, maybe in a book or a podcast or even a video. These are vehicles of multiplication. They go where your feet can't. The third layer, layer 3, if your fruit is a good or a service, then multiply production. David built a military system. He didn't just fight well. He organized divisions. He appointed commanders. He created rotations. Read First Chronicles chapter 27, and you'll see it's an organizational chart. Monthly divisions, regional leaders, agricultural overseers. David systemized what he produced so it could scale beyond his personal effort. If you have a business, a service, a ministry operation, the question is, can it run when you are not in the room? If it can't, you haven't multiplied. You've just been doing addition with a heavier workload. So now we look at the fourth layer. And the fourth layer says this: if your fruit is a talent or a skill, multiply others. David mentored, he invested, he pulled men close and poured into them. And the evidence is in the text. His men didn't just survive battles, they killed giants. They didn't just maintain what David built, they expanded what he built. Who are you mentoring? Who are you training? Who are you pouring your skill into so that when you step back, when you step away, the work doesn't just continue, it accelerates. Multiplication is not one action, it's a system. Duplicate, reproduce, lock in skill, systemize, release, and then watch it repeat without you. Now, I've shown you the theology, I've shown you the model, but I need to take you somewhere personal right now because there's a danger in all of this that I know firsthand. And it's the danger that keeps me up at night. When I was growing up, my mama used to make these buttermilk pancakes from scratch. Oh, these pancakes were amazing. They were amazing. And I remember waking up and she would have made these pancakes and you cut into them, you pick it up and you bite it and it just melts in your mouth. Oh my God, they were the best pancakes I ever tasted. And my mama was a genius in the kitchen. She had a recipe. She took a recipe that she found, but she put her own tweak on it to make it that good. Now, I know this because I tried to make it one time and I followed the recipe to the T, and they didn't come out like hers. But here's the problem. I kept telling myself, I'm going to get that tweak from my mom. I need that tweak. I'm going to find that tweak. I'm going to get it. And I said, one day I'm going to get it. And I kept putting it off. Till one day, mama wasn't here to teach me that little tweak that she did to the recipe to get those buttermilk pancakes so good. So that information, that one little tweak, so that I can make those pancakes for myself, even for my family, was lost. It died with her. Now, no matter how much I want those pancakes, no matter how much my taste buds want them, and I remember that flavor and that taste, I can't make them. I can't pass this on to my kids or to my nieces or nephews. That recipe, that tweak is gone forever. Not because my mother wasn't fruitful. She was abundantly fruitful. She made it. She could do it. And whenever she cooked, I could have those pancakes. So she produced something incredible, but she didn't transfer it. She didn't multiply it. And so it died with her. Now, let me ask you something. And I need you to sit with this. What's your pancake recipe? What has God placed in you? What gift? What knowledge? What revelation? What skill that's sitting in your hands right now? Unwritten, untaught, untransferred. Because If David had killed Goliath and never trained another warrior, the Philistines would have won the next war. The nation would have been vulnerable. One man's victory would have been one generation's peak and the next generation's collapse. That's what happened when you produce but don't multiply. Your fruit feeds you, but it dies with you. And hear me, the graveyard doesn't just hold bodies, it holds recipes. It holds businesses that were never systemized, ministries that were never handed off, books that were never finished, teachings that were never recorded, family wisdom that was never spoken out loud. The graveyard is full of fruit that rotted on the vine because nobody took it off the tree and planted it somewhere else. What's not being transferred is terminated. What's not multiplied is buried. So the question is no longer, are you producing? We settled that at the last teaching. The question now is, what are you doing with what you produced? Now, let me bring this all together. In this series, we've been walking through the process of dominion, which is a sequence built into Genesis 1:28. And every step builds on the one before it. In the first part, we focused on B. You become before you do. Your identity unlocks your assignment. Then we went to the next step, which was be fruitful. Once you know who you are, produce from that identity. Let the evidence of the kingdom show up in your life. And now, this is the third part, which is multiply. Take what you've produced and replicate it, duplicate it, transfer it, systemize it, put it in somebody else's hands so that it outlives your hands. Addition builds your life. Multiplication builds the kingdom. Addition says, look at what I did. Multiplication says, look at what God did through me and through the people I poured into and through the people they poured into. David killed one giant, but because he multiplied, his men killed dozens. Jesus walked with 12, but because he multiplied, billions have been transformed. Multiplication is not about how much you can carry. It's about how many people can carry what you started without you holding the bag. So here's your assignment. And I'm not being rhetorical. I want you to actually do this. Number one, identify your fruit. What have you produced? Name it. A skill, a teaching, a business process, a ministry gift, a parenting principle, a creative ability, whatever it is. What is it? Identify it. Number two, identify your person. Who is God calling you to pour that into? Not the crowd, not the audience, but start with one person. David didn't train an army overnight. He started with men closest to him. And three, start the transfer. This week, not, well, one day, not, well, next month, not when conditions are perfect. Start the transfer this week. Because every day the fruit sits in your hands unshared, it's one day closer to the grave. The multiplication is powerful, but multiplication without replenishment leads to exhaustion. Think about it. A farmer who plants and multiplies his crops year after year, but never puts anything back into the soil, what happens? The ground goes barren. The multiplication stops and the whole system collapses. That's what happens when people multiply without filling back up. They pour out and pour out and pour out until there's nothing left. And then they wonder why they're burned out, why everything is dried up and is empty now. And see, God knew this. That's why the next command after multiply wasn't subdue, it was fill the earth, replenish, restore, put back what was taken out. Next time, we're going to unlock the principle of filling. And I promise you, this one is going to set some of you free because some of you are already multiplying, but you're doing it on empty. And God has something to say about that. Multiply, but don't run dry. Fill the earth. Thank you. We'll see you next week.